Hey, RetconRaider here. Now, I've already talked about Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark in a couple of my other videos, but I thought I'd throw together a quick update video. This obviously won't come as much of a surprise if you're already following the crowdfunding campaign, but as of last week, Fell Seal was successfully crowdfunded on Kickstarter. I'll admit, things looked a little dicey for a while, but they managed to just barely reach their funding goal during the last 2 days of the campaign, and ended with a respectable total of $45,000 US. Not bad considering that the game is already in a pretty playable state. Sadly, although they did manage to reach their overall funding goal, they never quite built up enough momentum to achieve much in the way of stretch goals, with one notable exception. This adds a new recruitable race known as the Basil, an insectoid species who can't take on normal classes, but instead are able to emulate the abilities and forms of other monstrous races they encounter. The second stretch goal was originally intended to be a new idle animation, to take the place of the eternal walking animation that's featured in the current pre-alpha demo. As I mentioned in my previous video, due to backer demand, the developers decided to just go ahead and add this to the game anyway. The next two locked stretch goals would have been for an additional difficulty mode, as well as additional cosmetic options for your recruits. While we didn't end up unlocking either of these stretch goals, the developers have decided to continue accepting late pledges through BackerKit, and late pledges will all still count towards these locked stretch goals. Although nothing is set in stone, the developers are currently planning on continuing to accept late pledges until the beginning of the backer beta later this year. Aside from the stretch goals, the Fell Seal crowdfunding campaign also reached its first 3 social goals, including additional portrait art for the main characters, as well as a new hat and accessory for your recruitable mercenaries. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to achieve the 4th social goal, which would have added an additional class to the game, but the developers have stated that they're still hoping to include it in the final game, as long as they have the resources to reasonably manage it. So, now that the game is funded, what's next for Fell Seal? Well, the developers are currently focused on developing the game, but they're tentatively planning to begin the closed backer beta in December. After that, the developers plan on releasing the game through Steam's Early Access program next March, with a full release planned sometime in the 3rd quarter of 2018. While the game will only be available on Steam during the closed beta and early access periods, the final game is also planned for release on the Xbox One, with additional possibilities for release on the PlayStation 4 and the Nintendo Switch. If you think Fell Seal looks like a game that you might be interested in, you can find out more about it by visiting the official website or the crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter. Like I mentioned earlier, even though the Kickstarter campaign has ended, you can still back the project through BackerKit. Links are in the description.